lose each other. Ronald DeFeo, a 23-year-old young man, stood between fear and hesitation, looking for help. His face was pale, and his hands were visibly trembling. He shouted to the people, "Help me! My family has been killed!" His body trembled as he looked around desperately, like someone searching for a lifeline. At first, none of the visitors understood the shocking words the young man uttered, but when they saw the terror on his face, it was clear he was on the verge of a breakdown. The village of Amityville is relatively small, and the people there are used to knowing each other, at least by sight if not by name. The young man's name was Ronald DeFeo Jr., and the people in the bar knew him and his family well. Their house was close to the pub, just 1 block away. Without much conversation, a group of people rushed with him towards the house. Perhaps no one believed him, or the alcohol prevented them from thinking about the truth of his words. If what he said was true, it meant there was a crime scene. The first step was to call the police and prevent anyone from entering the house. But no one expected the horrific scene they would witness, a sight that would haunt their nightmares forever. Minutes later, the police arrived at the crime scene. Ronald DeFeo Sr., his wife Louise DeFeo, and his 4 children, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, were all in their beds, lying face down, shot at close range with a 35mm pistol. Ronald Jr. was completely broken, mumbling, crying, and throwing accusations in every direction. He said that they had been killed by a gang of monsters. It was clear that he had lost control and, with no other course of action, the police took him with them for his own protection, as he was the only surviving member of the family. Perhaps his extreme emotional breakdown and wild accusations transformed him from a potential victim to a possible killer. Initially, he told the police that a gang member named Louis Fellini was responsible for the murders. Unfortunately for him, this person, despite being a criminal with a history, had a solid alibi for that night. The real problem wasn't identifying the perpetrator. The real issue was that every time Ronald spoke about the events, describing his arrival at the house, what he saw and what he did, he would always forget details, add new ones, and mix up times and hours. In short, every word he uttered seemed to make the investigators more certain that he was involved in the crime, and perhaps even the killer himself. It didn't take long before, just a few days later, Ronald DeFeo Jr. confessed to killing his father, mother, and siblings. He revealed where the weapon was, and the charges were confirmed against him. But the story didn't end there. The mystery remained, and to this day it's far from solved. The problem with the case was that there were too many unanswered questions. The first was the motive. Why did he do it? What could drive a young man of that age to commit such a horrific crime? The second question, how did the neighbors not hear the gunshots? 6 shots. How did they pass without anyone noticing? But the biggest mystery was the position in which the bodies were found. All 6 of them were face down, lying on their stomachs. There were no traces of drugs in their bodies, no indication that they were unconscious, and no signs of a struggle or that the killer had forced them into this position. How were 6 people killed one after another, as if each one was waiting their turn in their beds with complete surrender? No one could answer these questions at all. The killer entered a phase of claiming insanity, saying that he had heard voices commanding him to do it. He also said that he was under the influence of drugs and couldn't remember anything from that night. Even during the trial, his statements changed every time he was asked about the crime. The trial ended in October 1975, with Ronald DeFeo Jr. being sentenced to 6 life sentences, totaling 150 years in prison. It seemed like the story had come to an end, but in reality, the story was just beginning. There was a small ceramic lion statue in the house that moved from its place every so often. George kept asking his wife why she moved it, but she always insisted she hadn't touched it. During this period, they didn't try to connect the strange occurrences, like waking up at the same time every night, the sudden coldness, and the moving statue. They tried to avoid thinking that all these things were somehow related. However, the strange events started to increase and diversify over time. One day, one of the children complained about a large number of flies on his bedroom window. This was odd in January, so his mother didn't think much of it, especially when they returned to the room and the flies had completely disappeared after using an insect repellent. But over time, things began to get more serious. One day in January, a very foul odor spread throughout the house with no apparent cause. Due to the extreme cold, they tried to maintain the temperature inside the house but had to open the windows for ventilation. At that moment, the eldest son, Daniel, was trying to open the window when suddenly the window cover collapsed and fell onto his fingers, causing him severe pain. When his parents tried to help him, it took a great effort, as the window seemed much heavier than normal, or as though it had its own will. The feeling that something evil was in the house became harder to ignore. One night, George woke up at 3 a.m., a time that had become routine. But he noticed that his wife was moving strangely, standing in front of the mirror as though she were sleepwalking. Things didn't stop there. George heard mysterious whispers and saw chairs and mirrors moving on their own. Even when he tried to wake his wife, she didn't respond. With no other choice, they decided to leave the house quickly. After that night, the family contacted experts in exorcism, which brought them widespread fame. One of these experts, after entering a brief trance, confirmed the presence of something evil in the house. Additionally, one of the photographers complained about a rapid heartbeat and felt he was about to faint. The footage of this session was aired on television, and the story gained huge media attention. However, despite all these events, some families who lived in the house after them began to dispute the truth of the story, which sparked many doubts. In 1979, George and Kathy underwent a lie detector test, and the results confirmed the truth of everything they had said. The story sparked a huge controversy, but it certainly left an unforgettable mark. The Amityville Horror case remains one of the most perplexing and debated mysteries in criminal history. Despite extensive investigations and numerous theories, many questions about the events of that night remain unanswered. Unanswered questions. Motive. The primary question that continues to haunt investigators and the public is, why did Ronald DeFeo Jr. murder his family? DeFeo provided various explanations, including claims of hearing voices commanding him to commit the murders. However, none of these explanations have been conclusively proven, leaving the true motive a mystery. After the murders, the house was reported to be haunted by the Lutz family, who experienced various paranormal activities during their brief stay. While some believe these accounts, others view them with skepticism, considering them as fabrications or exaggerations. The true nature of the events that occurred in the house remains a subject of debate. DeFeo's confession. DeFeo's confession has been questioned over the years. Some believe he acted alone, while others suggest he may have had an accomplice. The inconsistencies in his statements and the lack of concrete evidence make it difficult to determine the full extent of his involvement. Vocal. The Amityville Horror case continues to captivate the public's imagination, inspiring numerous books, documentaries, and films. However, the true story remains shrouded in mystery, with many questions still unanswered. My name is Mohab Mekawy, and my channel is called Into the Unknown. If you liked this story, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. And for more amazing mystery stories, don't forget to follow us.